Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the introduction and thank you for having me here. Indeed, it may seem strange that a Belgian is coming to Münster to talk about the Swedish situation. Well, I have to admit, I'm mainly based at the University of Leuven in Belgium, but I'm holding a visiting professorship at the University of Gothenburg in Sweden. And it's in Gothenburg that I'm chairing the Healthcare Transition Research Group. And it's with this research group that we are conducting a large-scale study called Stepstones. And it's about stepstones that I would like to talk today. I'm quite sure that based on the previous talks that you had today, that you understand that transition programs and transitional care, that this is a complex intervention. And what is a complex intervention? Complex interventions are built from a number of components that may act independently and interdependently. So it's a set of ingredients that you put together. The problem is that quite often the active ingredient is unknown or difficult to specify. It is like you are cooking and you are wondering which specific ingredient determines the taste. Well, it's seldomly that you can point one ingredient. It's the combination of ingredients that makes the taste. It's the combination of active components in the intervention that determines the effect. Because transition programs are complex interventions, it is not easy to evaluate the effectiveness of such a transition program. And this is the reason why the Medical Research Council in the UK several years ago, they developed a framework to develop and evaluate complex interventions. And this framework looks like this. You start with the development, do feasibility and piloting, evaluation and implementation. And it's a circular approach. And sometimes you need to go back. When you do some feasibility studies, it may end up in the fact that you are sent back to the drawing board and need to do some developmental work again. So, once again, if you are trying to evaluate a transition program, you cannot just start with an effectiveness study. You need to do some groundwork. And this is in fact what we did in Sweden and in Belgium as well. Over the past decade, we have done several studies that helped us to understand what is the situation right now, what are the experiences of our patients and families, what are the expectations of them, how can we improve the care for our patients. We did these studies in people with congenital heart disease. And of course it makes sense that later on we do the effectiveness study also in congenital heart disease. On one hand, I'd like to give the results of this study. It would take us quite some time to explain everything that we learned from the different studies. And that's the reason why our research group decided to make a video out of it. So everything, the key elements that we learned from all these preparatory studies are kind of summarized in the video. I'd like to show the video right now for you. It is in Swedish, but it has English subtitles.
Jag börjar nog ändå känna mer och mer att detta är hennes liv. Att hon måste börja ta ansvar. När hon var yngre så ringde jag hela tiden och kollade vad hon var. Men det har jag släppt nu. Man måste våga släppa taget. Just därför är det ju också så viktigt att hon får information om sin sjukdom själv, om sin behandling.
Det har varit jättebra på barnkliniken. Man känner alla där och det är som hemma liksom. På vuxenmottagningen så är allt så himla nytt. Nya sjuksköterskor, nya läkare, ny mottagning. Ja, men ett helt nytt sjukhus. Så jag tror att det kanske kommer ta ett tag innan man vänjer sig. Och känner sig bekväm och slutar oroa sig inför allt det nya.
Jag tycker det är jättesvårt att släppa taget. Jag har ju tagit hand om alla besök, mediciner och uppföljningar ända sedan han var liten och nu ska han gå själv. Jag menar, bara för att han är vuxen nu kan de inte förvänta sig att han kan allt.
Förra året satt det bara en massa småbarn i väntrummet. Jag tänkte bara, vad gör jag här? Jag vill känna mig mer som en vuxen. Få mer ansvar, ha koll. Mamma och pappa har ju vetat mer om mig än vad jag själv har gjort. Det är de som jämt har haft kontakt med läkaren. Jag tog bara mina tabletter och gjorde som de sa.
Det var typ på sista besöket som läkaren sa så här: ja, det här är ditt sista besök hos oss. Jag visste inte ens att jag behövde fortsätta. Så att när jag kom till vuxenmottagningen så var allt rätt oklart. Jag visste till exempel inte om mamma och pappa fick följa med in till läkaren. Det har de ju alltid gjort förr. Och ja, så jag hängde bara med och vågade väl inte riktigt fråga, tror jag.
Vad ska hon tänka på om hon ska resa eller om hon blir sjuk? Och jag har inte heller alla svar. Det är svårt att vara ett stöd då. Vad ska hon göra om hon har glömt att ta sin medicin? Det är många sådana saker som inte jag vet. Kan hon få barn? Det är en sak som jag vet att hon oroar sig för själv och inte har vågat fråga läkaren. Och jag undrar ju också, hur påverkar en sån sak hälsan? Det oroar jag ju inte henne med, men jag vet faktiskt inte vem jag ska prata med om det.
Nu vill jag att läkaren ska prata med och lyssna på mig. Det är mitt liv, min kropp. Jag vill inte att de bara ska undersöka mitt hjärta utan faktiskt se mig som en person också. Jag vill vara den som vet saker om mig själv och sen kan dela det med mamma, pappa, kompisar, lärare och så.
Jag önskar att jag hade fått vara mer delaktig i processen. Att jag hade fått information av vården om hur och när överföringen skulle ske så att jag och min son, att vi tillsammans hade kunnat bestämma om det här var något han kunde klara av själv eller inte. Helst skulle jag vilja fortsätta att sitta med in hos läkaren, men att jag sitter där tyst. Ja. Samtidigt så vill jag inte tjata på honom, för jag tror att mitt tjat gör att han inte berättar allt för mig.
Innan har mamma bara sagt att jag inte får ta ut mig för mycket i gympan, men jag har inte fattat varför. Är det för att jag blir trött? Är det för att jag är sjuk? Eller är det för att jag har dålig kondis och därför inte kan träna så mycket?
Fast det kanske är bra i och för sig att mamma lär sig släppa på kontrollen lite. Hon blir jämt jätteorolig så fort jag ska träna för att det ska hända något. Vilket jag fattar. Men jag måste ju också få lära mig att ta hand om mig själv. Jag är inget barn längre.
This is a 5-minute summary of countless hours of interviews, you can imagine. But it really gives a grab on what are the experiences and expectations of our patients and their parents. And this was indeed what helped us to develop the Stepstones intervention. And the Stepstones intervention, first of all, Stepstones stands for Swedish Transition Effects Projects supporting teenagers with chronic medical conditions. It is generic by nature, but we start in congenital heart disease first because we did the groundwork there. And the design of the study is explained in a BMJ Open article entitled Person-Centered Transition Program to Empower Adolescents with Congenital Heart Disease in the Transition to Adulthood. A study protocol for a hybrid randomized controlled trial. And a hybrid randomized controlled trial, the design of this study looks like this. We definitely wanted to do a randomized controlled trial because this is the gold standard to do evaluation studies on effectiveness. So therefore, we are randomizing patients to either an intervention group or a comparison group of people that are getting the usual care of today. The problem with complex interventions or healthcare interventions at large is that there is a risk for contamination. If a physician or a nurse or another clinician see what is happening in a trial, they may be inspired like, hey, I should give more attention to this, I should talk to my patients about that as well. And by doing so, with all good intentions, they are contaminating the control group. And for that reason, we have an extra third arm, and that's considered the control group in the Stepstones project. And the third arm, this is an assessment in patients in what we call intervention-naive centers. In these centers, transition is, or the intervention, the Stepstones intervention, is not implemented in that hospital at all. It's a nationwide study all over Sweden, and the intervention centers, or the randomized control centers, are indicated in the yellow pin, and this is Gothenburg and Stockholm. And the uncontaminated control group is collected in 5 centers indicated with the blue pins, which is Lund, Linköping, Örebro, Uppsala, and Umeå. In each arm, we intend to recruit 70 patients based on power analysis. The primary outcome in this study is empowerment. The reason why we choose for empowerment is, and I come back to that later on in my next presentation, you cannot choose for outcomes that are too distal, where you need a decade of assessments. In an evaluation study, it's not appropriate. And therefore, empowerment is a kind of an intermediate outcome. We need to admit that. But empowerment is a very strong indicator for good self-management of the patients, an appropriate navigation within the healthcare system, better adherence to treatments, and so on and so on. So people that are empowered do better than people with a low level of empowerment. So if we can increase the level of empowerment, then we probably give the necessary tools to the patients to fare well afterwards. How does the project looks like, or the intervention? Like I said, it's a complex intervention, different components. We have 8 components in the Stepstones intervention. The first component is the transition coordinator. Actually, the role that Linda is performing. Second component is a transition plan. We provide information and education. There is a telephone and email availability. We provide info about the adult congenital heart disease program, and we bring the patients and families in contact with the adult congenital heart disease program. We provide guidance to the parents, meetings with peers. We heard from Linda that this is a very critical and very important element from the perspective of the patients. And finally, the actual transfer to adult care. These are the 8 components. These are our ingredients. We provide these components in 5 steps, and let us call that the stones of Stepstones. We have a first meeting with the transition coordinator. We have a second meeting with the transition coordinator. We have the adolescent day, and recall the rhythmic beats gatherings that Linda was referring to. A third meeting with the transition coordinator, and then finally the transfer. What are the pillars, or what are the basic principles in what transition coordinators are doing? First of all, we heavily rely on HEADS. And HEADS is the abbreviation for home, education, activities, diet, drugs, depression, sex, and safety. And this is in fact the cornerstone of an adolescent health interview. You cannot do proper transition without having a view on how does the life of this adolescent looks like and what are the domains that are relevant for a young person. So health is really an important pillar, an important part of adolescent health and of the transition program. Since parents need to learn to let go, we are working with the shared management model. In the beginning, the parents are the providers of the care, and we want to gradually evolve towards a situation where the young person is the CEO of their own health and their own life. This cannot be done in an abrupt way. This needs some staged approaches. This is also a document that we are using, or that the transition coordinators are using. We want to be person-centered. This means that we want to make room for the patients to discuss the things that they want to discuss. So we offer this and say, okay, please let us know, what do you want to talk about? Where do you have questions about? And it can be about the anatomy of the heart, how things are going at school, certain health behaviors, but they can bring in new aspects as well that are not indicated here. Doing so, we can really tailor the intervention to the needs of the patients. So, right now, as I said, we are conducting this study in people with congenital heart disease in Sweden. Recruitment will be finished by spring 2019. We follow up the patients for 2.5 years, so it takes still some years before we really can announce the results of the study. However, Stepstones was generic by nature. Right now we are in the planning phase to expand the project to diabetes patients in Sweden and see to what extent do we need to change, to modify the Stepstones intervention to make it more appropriate for diabetes patients. So, thank you very much. This was the Swedish experience.